I think this is a fundamental change.
Promulgation of the Constitution.
Hello and welcome to the fifth episode in our series, The Evolution of a Nation, a documentary series recounting Uganda's political, social and economic history. I'm Bart Kakoza. Just to refresh your memory, we ended the previous episode with the formation of UPC and Kabaka Yeka alliance aimed at defeating DP in the pre-independence elections. In this episode, we look at the pre-independence elections, the significance of the alliance, DP's dilemma, and the independence celebrations. Thanks for joining us. At the Lancaster Constitutional Conference, the UPC had supported Buganda's desires on the manner of selecting the 21 representatives to the National Assembly. Both Buganda and UPC had not only vehemently pressed for fresh elections, but also advanced their common position on the timetable for the elections. Against strong opposition from the DP, who had proposed that fresh elections should be held 5 years after independence, these demands were endorsed by the conference, and a de facto alliance between UPC and Mengo government was sealed.
The British, the UPC, the Kabaka Yeka had to gang together and actually change the independence political arrangement that they had agreed upon, that Chiwanuka would be in power or the internal self-government would remain for another 5 years when there would be another election for also internal self-government, which would last until 1971, when actually the British thought they would give the total independence. But all of a sudden they changed the political arrangement that they had agreed upon, and in 1962 they said we should have another election. And this time Buganda realized that boycott was not the solution. They had to form a party in 1961 called Kabaka Yeka, or the King Alone, to mobilize support from Buganda and also to ally with UPC in order to defeat their erstwhile opponents, the Democratic Party and IH1.
And Obote being shrewd, that one, he did not allow the party structures to participate. He took it his personal initiative. He went there, fell down before the Kabaka, gave him, tantalized him, and I gave him that he promised the heaven.
That marriage was a marriage of convenience. We knew that the friendship was because of access to the leadership of Uganda.
I say this work you are doing today in the London conference, this alliance that you have made, is going to cause Uganda to shed blood. And that one is there. And Mr. MacLeod, who was then the chairman of the conference, became very disturbed with this statement. He said, Mr. Okay, can you withdraw? I said, I cannot withdraw. You withdraw the UPC, the Kabaka Yeka line here in the London conference.
Now, as recommended in the Lancaster Conference, polls were held in Uganda and the rest of Uganda in April 1962. To campaign and solicit votes for the party, UPC had a group of young dynamic Turks who had been studying in India and Pakistan and had experienced the politics there.
Beginning with John Kakonge, who was Secretary General of the UPC, many of us who were politically conscious joined the UPC as young people, and who committed ourselves towards organizing the people without being employed. People like myself, Bidandi Sali, Kirunda Kive Jinja, Wadada Musani, Wadada Nabudere, Chango Macho, were young people. So, and we are members of the UPC. So working within the UPC with our ideas, which were brought from India and from the UK, we came and put a lot of effort within the party.
And a year later, Chintomusoke, the target was really to play a role of breaking the alliance between UPC and KY at that time, because we considered this a very retrogressive arrangement where national politics was more or less unknown in Uganda, and we saw it as an eventual time bomb.
As an election machine, Kabaka Yeka totally outclassed the DP and spread like wildfire throughout the Buganda countryside. The most damning to DP was the presentation of the issue as a choice between Ben Chiwanuka and the Kabaka.
The way he treated the Kabaka particularly. I necessarily once he said, at least repeated have said, oh, if the Kabaka wants this, let him come to Entebbe. Talk to me. Talk to you. And you see, Uganda at that time, much more than now, it was very, very, very touchy. Who is saying this? A Muganda. Asking the Kabaka of Uganda, his own Kabaka, if you want anything problem, you come to me at Entebbe. They didn't like that.
Yeah.
They thought this was too much for them. So they said, okay, this is what you are saying.
In posing the choice this way, Kabaka Yeka was presented as the party which was for Buganda and the throne. The Democratic Party had no counter to this sort of propaganda.
It was playing like matters, come what may. The Kabaka Yeka say, hey, DP is going to destroy our kingdomship. So don't vote Kiwanuka, vote Kabaka Yeka.
Chiwanuka announced an increase in prices paid to coffee farmers. He promised to turn Buganda into a democracy. He denounced reactionaries and tribalists and his followers who are loyalty to their Kabaka. The difficulty was that the chiefs and the campaigners were able to insist that to oppose the Kabaka Yeka was actually to oppose Kabaka.
It was not defying the Kabaka. It was trying to show the country and my fellow Baganda the truth. Yeah. Because our motto was truth and justice. We were more nationalist than the people who were in Mengo, who are deceiving Kabaka.
It was high time that Chiwanuka realized that he was a Catholic Muganda, and for the DP as a party, that the election was about identity and not policy.
And I stood in a Makerere constituency, and the people in Mengo ganged against me, and they put in a man called Nsedi. He used to sell Mwenga down below there, and literate as he was, he defeated me. so I said, okay, I've given my fellow Baganda a chance, and they have rejected it.
The election for the Luchiko members were held in February 1962 before those of the representatives from the rest of the country. The process in Uganda was entirely under the control of Mengo. This was no doubt an unfair advantage to anyone who attempted to contest against Mengo's favored candidates.
The 1962 elections were heavily rigged because they were organized by Mengo and they were rigged by the Electoral Commission headed by Abu Mayanja and Mengo.
The election results in Uganda turned out as expected. Kabaka Yeka swept them by winning 69 out of 72 seats. But most sadly for DP, the election sealed its leader's fate.
Chiwanuka lost. One, he lost his seat in Budu, in Masaka. And secondly, even if he had won and come to the Luchiko, because the independence arrangement, constitution or arrangement was such that Buganda would now elect their members to the legislative assembly indirectly. The Luchiko would sit as a constituent college and nominate people or elect people to go to the National Assembly. And in this case, even if Chiwanuka had come to the Luchiko, Mengo would have ensured that he does not go to the National Assembly.
In the national elections held in April 1962, 1.5 months after the Uganda elections, UPC won 37 as against DP's 22 seats. Mengo had already elected their 21 representatives from the Luchiko to the National Assembly. Subsequently, the alliance between UPC and Kabaka Eka formed the government led by Obote as Prime Minister.
There was no official pact under which UPC said, I'll form a government with KY. All that Mengo said KY said was that the members of parliament on Kabaka Ika, from Kabaka Ika, will sit on the UPC side. If UPC was on the opposition, KY would have sat on the opposition. But they sat on the government side. Once they got there, Obote's political acumen took over. He was more astute than most. He realized that these people are just loosely sitting on my side. Let me start getting them to join my party so that I get the numbers. And that's what he did.
They had an alliance formed. So the 12 of them, their membership in parliament, right? They decided who was going to be the prime minister.
Obote proceeded to name his 17-man cabinet, the first post-independent cabinet of the country, including William Wilberforce Nadiope, the Kyabazinga of Busoga, prime minister.
This was based on the British system, the British cabinet system. The British cabinet system at the time, as it is now, a party with the majority in parliament, right? The leader of that party, at least someone they've chosen, become the prime minister. The prime minister picks his team. We had not ourselves here, as Ugandans, the experience of running a country by ourselves. So we had the British governor as Governor General, but not the head of the government. The head of the government was the prime minister, in the sense that executively he was the head of the executive government and responsible to parliament. He used to call it National Assembly at the time.
Now, you realize that although these elections were carried out throughout the colony and resulted in a government which was considered legitimate by all parts of Uganda, there still remained some burning constitutional issues to be resolved before independence. The most controversial matter of them all was the lost counties, the 2 counties of Buyaga and Bugangaizi that had been turned over to Buganda as a reward for assisting in British subjugation of Bunyoro.
Buganda collaborated and it was rewarded. It was rewarded with 2 counties with the territory of Bunyoro that included 2 counties of Buyaga and Bugangaizi. And in the same vein, that was a punishment for Bunyoro for having resisted. And the Baganda wanted certainly to assert their right, legitimacy over those counties. And Bunyoro, of course, resisted, starting from the Nyangira Baganda rebellion. And even within those areas of Buyaga and Bugangaizi, movements like the Mubende, Banyoro community came up and waged an armed resistance against Buganda. And it continued becoming a major issue that warranted resolving.
A constitutional conference was scheduled to address these issues.
The Banyoro had campaigned for years to get those counties back. And there had to be some kind of a decision at independence of how that dispute was to be resolved.
In May 1962, just as Obote was settling down at his desk as Prime Minister, the Private Commission chaired by Lord Morrison published its findings on the lost counties. The Commission recommended the return of the counties of Buyaga and Bugangaizi to Bunyoro. As expected, Buganda rejected these proposals and Bunyoro accepted them. Bunyoro, however, demanded that this transfer must be effected before the start of the Second Lancaster Constitutional Conference, scheduled for June 12, 1962. The conference took place as scheduled, and the lost counties issue dominated the proceedings. On the 27th June, the Colonial Secretary, Lord Maudling, delivered the verdict of the British government. Buyaga and Bugangaizi were to remain part of Buganda while being administered by the central government, and after not less than 2 years, the National Assembly shall decide on the date of referendum, in which the people of the counties will say whether they prefer to be in Buganda or Bunyoro or remain under the central government. The Buganda delegation had walked out of the conference just before this pronouncement, having sensed the dominant mood.
I remember at that conference, since I was a member of the delegation, we even walked out of the Lancaster House when the Secretary of State and Secretary, Colonial Secretary, announced that arrangement of the referendum. We said, no, we can't have this. These are our counties. We shall not take part in the referendum. So we walk out. And the conference was almost going to stop there. Now, Obote writes to the Katikiro. It's a private personal note. I remember even the papers on which he wrote that small note, in his own handwriting. He says, Mr. Katikiro, don't fear. When the referendum comes, we are already in the same government.
Now, besides announcing 9th as an independence date, the Lancaster Constitutional Conference took a decision on a federal relations between Uganda and the central government, and also with other kingdoms, and had it codified in the 1962 Independence Constitution.
It recognized the basic nature of Uganda. It was a mosaic. You know what a mosaic is? A pattern. And these are Uganda, these are Cholis, whatever. And they said these some are kingdoms, some are not kingdoms, and this took together. And it was sort of a tapestry, political mosaic. And that's what happened. So the thing became a semi-federal state. Semi meaning this, that whereas Buganda had more powers than Toro, a smaller kingdom, Toro and Angola and Busoga and Bunyoro, the North refused, and Teso said, we don't want that sort of system. We want to be governed, directed from the center. So whereas we had here a relationship between Buganda and the central government, federal, this you may not do here in Buganda, this you may not do here, there. Functional division of power. In Toro, in East Africa, in Teso and Lango, we maintained the system of provincial commissioners, just as it was before 1962.
Uganda is about to attain her independence. The great day approaches. The independence celebrations will start tomorrow, Uganda.
Uganda became independent on the 9th October 1962 after 68 years of colonial rule.
5 rulers and ceremonial heads.
Celebrations to mark the occasion began on the eve of the 9th October and went on throughout the night up the next day all over the country.
It is a few seconds to midnight, and the crowd is tense.
The venue of the main national celebration was Kololo Air Street.
Are ending. As the national anthem is played for the last time under British rule, the Union Jack is formally lowered.
At the stroke of midnight, Milton Obote took the oath of office as the first Prime Minister of the newly independent Uganda.
Obote, do swear that I'll be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
The makeshift pavilions were full to capacity with exuberant and light-hearted Ugandans.
And uphold the Constitution of Uganda as by law established.
He then officially received instruments of power from the British colonial rulers, handed to him by the Duke of Kent, who had represented Queen Elizabeth II. Then followed simultaneously by the playing of the national anthem by the Uganda Rifles Band and the raising of the new Uganda national flag.
Uganda is independent. Prime Minister's portrait adds a grand finale to the evening. The next morning, the special built stadium at Kololo is again a star. The first guests are arriving, among them the ceremonial head of the Lango people. Huge crowds start to pour into the stadium to find their seats according to their invitation cards. They are assembling to see the ceremony of independence.
Well, that's all we had time for from the series for now. In the next episode, we shall focus on the first 2 years after independence. Kabaka becoming president, the Sheke Kabaka Eka UPC alliance, and the country's economy. Thanks for being part of a wider audience. I'm Bat Kakoza. See you next time.